As the last days, weeks, and months went by in 1957, Victor Francis only could hope that 1958 would bring better days for him and to his family. But in his case, wishful thinking went the other way. The year of 1958 finally came, and Bette Davis and Joan Crawford were hoping their careers would be longer and better as they both aged when looking in their mirrors. Frank Sinatra had thrown his lucky dices for a long period of time, and he made it clear that no one better stand in his way for success. Dean Martin was feeling pretty good by the way he acted in his recent motion pictures, and he was praising the Almighty that he didn't have to drag Jerry Lewis around anymore. When 1958 came, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford always dreaded the day that it would come. Both of them didn't have a single motion picture on the silver screens that year, and everyone, and even Wall Street, should have known something horrible was brewing behind the scenes. Here is a personal recollection I once heard from my Uncle Tony about the relationships he saw and heard when living within the Buono house. The only reason why I'm writing this is to hopefully help us to understand who Victor Charles truly was when he was alive. It may be a clue into his character and behavior, or it might only be nothing at all. My Uncle Tony had once told me on April 3rd, 2007, that Victor Charles was afraid of his father, Victor Francis, due to his abuse to his mother. To be fair to my step-grandfather, Victor Francis, my Uncle Tony didn't describe the severity of abuse he might have given to my Grandma Mert. I would like to think it was only verbal abuse instead of being physical, but even with that, Victor Charles may have been fearful of him throughout his entire life. I turned 5 years old on September 24th, 1958, and it was the year that I started remembering images of the Buono house near South Mission Beach. Victor Francis was 50 years old and Grandma Mert was 48. My father Sonny was 30 and my mother Hilda was still in her 20s at 26. Victor Charles was 19, his younger brother David Francis was 11, and Tony was 16 and going to La Jolla High School. My sister Teresa was 9 and Renee was 6 years old. I loved visiting with my Buono family and playing under the sun, on the sand, and in the water of Mission Bay in front of their house. If you ran out of their front door, you would be in the bay within 10 seconds. My young ears were always acute to hearing crackling laughter and passionate, salty verbiage stories spewing out of my Granny Grunt's mouth. There was electricity in the air when visiting the Buono house, and to this very day, I credit them for making me become an actor from their dramatic tones and crackling, funny stories. My step-grandfather, Victor Francis, continued having men who wore suits and hats visiting his house, and I always wondered who they were. And later in my life, my father Sonny told me that they were members of the Matranga family. It was commonly known that the Matrangas were associates with San Diego boss Tony Mirabile. I was always treated nicely from these men, and they were like uncles of the family, and my step-grandfather, Victor Francis, took me and my two sisters across Mission Boulevard to Belmont Park, where the roller coaster ride was overlooking the Pacific Ocean. It seems so normal in those days when thinking back on them. Some people might say my step-grandfather, Victor Francis, easily got off the hook by smuggling parakeets and parrots from Mexico. He definitely dodged that particular debacle, but if he had only refrained from taking further steps down his darkened path, his life would have been all the better for him and his family. During 1958, Victor Francis owed a fine of $5,000, which is equivalent to being $44,231.16 at today's standards, and he was placed on a 3 years probation. He most likely lost his bail bonds business along the way, and he was facing an enormous financial challenge to survive and to provide for his family. At that point in time, he was living 73 miles north of San Diego in Perris, California. Obviously, there might have been a separation with my grandma Mert. 19 years old Victor Charles was studying at the University of San Diego, and he didn't act in any productions at the Old Globe Theater during 1958. 11 years old David Francis soon would be living at the Army and Navy Academy boarding school. My father, Sonny, was in his third year as being a San Diego County sheriff, and he was 30 years old, and he must have been greatly concerned about what was taking place in his mother's life. Throughout my entire early life, my father never described the many details of what was happening to his stepfather, Victor Francis, between the years of 1955 to 1958. It was a common practice within the whole family to keep secrets buried safely and out of sight. Within the culture of a mafia family, it teaches everyone to remain silent. What was taking place in 1958 was a crisis within the Buono family, and it was never discussed throughout my teenage years and onward. Not until I was much older when I discovered what truly had happened during that disastrous year. The future fates of Victor Francis and Victor Charles began on the evening of December 27, 1958, when Tony Mirabile was murdered. They soon were going in separate directions within their lives. When Victor Francis woke up on the following morning after Tony Mirabile was murdered, and he had a cup of coffee reading how he died, we can only imagine what must have been rushing through his head. He obviously must have hoped that none of his conspirators of murder would be discovered and arrested. He must have had great concerns about his missing gun that killed Mirabile, and was hoping it wouldn't be found by the police and investigators. Only Victor Francis knew the true reason why his conspirators went into Mirabile's apartment that night. Was it only to rob Tony Mirabile of his money, or was it an ordered hit by the mafia? My father, Sonny, told me long ago that he believed his stepfather, Victor Francis, was handed the black ball to knock off Tony Mirabile to shut his mouth. That, of course, doesn't hold any sure evidence to prove my father's opinion being true, one way or another. On December 30th, 1958, when Victor Francis knew the authorities had found his gun and he would be questioned by the police and investigators, he was smart enough to know that he was hanging by a thread and was only an inch away from being arrested for the murder of Tony Mirabile. When and what did Victor Francis talk about to my grandma Mert and his son Victor Charles about the possibilities of him going to prison for many years? First and foremost, financial concerns must have been discussed about how his family would survive if and when he might be incarcerated. My Uncle David Francis was 11 years old, and his mother hadn't worked for a wage for probably over 20 years or more. The only family member that was old enough to earn a wage was 20 years old Victor Charles. But what could he do to earn enough money to provide for the Buono family? Victor Charles was only in his first stages of studying at the University of San Diego, and if his father, Victor Francis, went to prison, who would pay his tuition for college? Who would be paying the tuition for David Francis's boarding at the Army and Navy Academy School? They were still living at 3266 Bayside Walk. And who would pay the monthly electric bill, gas bill, taxes on the property or mortgages, food, and medical care? At this point in time, this was a financial crisis that had to be discussed within the family. During the months of December 30th, 1958 to February 3rd, 1959, Victor Francis had the opportunity to talk with mafia members who were connected in Hollywood that could possibly help his son, Victor Charles, to become a professional actor. It was Jack Warner and his right-hand man, William T. Orr, who eventually ushered Victor Charles into their studio for a film test in 1959, or earlier then. If money wasn't important for the Buono family in early 1959, then Victor Charles would have continued studying at the University of San Diego and working to get his college degree. I believe Victor Charles never had a job working for a wage as a waiter, cook, or any other type of employment anywhere by the time he had reached 20 years old. If and when Victor Francis, Grandma Mert, and Victor Charles sat around their kitchen table to discuss what could be done for their financial future before Victor Francis might go to prison. Their dialogue might possibly have gone something like this. Listen to me. If I'm found guilty, I'll be sent to prison, and there won't be any money for you to go to college. Vic, do you understand that? Yes. You're 20 years old now, and you need to help around the house for your mother and little Davy. Do you have any ideas of what work you can do? I've never had a job. I don't know what to do. You can do anything, Vic. You're smart. You're a valedictorian. You can do anything. What kind of job do you want? I'll help you to find it. I've got connections around town. They don't pay you any money, though. I know that. You want to be an actor? Is that what you want to do, Vic? Yes. I can't be a waiter. I'd scare the customers half to death, thinking I was an elephant. You want an acting job, then? Yes. I have an idea, Vic. It's a long shot, but it's worth the try. I have friends in Hollywood. I have a few connections there. Look at me, Vic. Do you really want to be an actor? I guess. That's not good enough. How bad do you want it, Vic? Yes. It's all I want to do. Okay. I'll see what I can do for making you a professional actor.